friends. In this chapter, we're going to examine visual media, visual liturgy, and lighting. We have this wonderful opportunity before us to enhance the telling of God's story and God's dreams for the future of creation through the use of new and emerging visual technologies. These can be especially powerful when coupled with existing visual media, such as the work of table art or altar art, if you prefer, depending on your theology. I'm really struck by the great power and opportunity we have because we live in such a visual culture. I mean, friends, most of us don't dream in words, but rather dream in images. And so if we can develop the aesthetic of visual storytelling, we will be able to reach people in some wonderful and marvelous ways. And then especially if we can begin to think of ourselves as atmosphere architects and begin to think of the worship experience through the lens of a filmmaker and the idea of layering elements on top of one another, music, liturgy, visual elements, we can really create some marvelous and powerful worship experiences. Let's talk briefly about the idea of projection. This is something that has been in the church for some time now, but in my experience, most folks tend to treat projection as if it's a giant word processor designed to just amplify lyrics or liturgy. And while that's important, I think we need to be really mindful of the innovative and creative ways in which we can use projection, certainly for that work, but also to help exegete the worship experience and the themes of the scripture for that day. So there's a variety I would say also that in our experience, certainly in our more traditional space, that we believe that screens and hymnals coexist, and they are all wonderfully useful and wonderfully important and necessary. So I don't think just because you have screens you shouldn't have hymnals, or vice versa. I think these things can live together in a wonderful way. So there's a variety of projection software on the market that folks are putting to good use. Some people will still use PowerPoint. Some people use Keynote, which is Apple's version of PowerPoint. Some folks use a wide variety of other Media Shout, for example. I believe sort of the Cadillac gold standard of projection software these days is a program called ProPresenter, which works marvelously well and integrates very simply with a wide variety of applications and is run best. You can run it on Windows platforms, but I find that it works extremely well on a Macintosh platform. So something to consider there. But there are a wide variety of options available to you. The trick is to find one that works for you and for your applications, especially for those of you who are employing volunteers to build your media presentations. We also need to consider, if you are getting into this for the first time or learning again in the idea of organ lessons to speak intelligently, there's two predominant ratios for projection. There's what we call HD versus SD. HD tends to be a 16:9 resolution, and SD tends to be a 4:3 resolution. In some sense, it's a widescreen, which would be 16:9 versus sort of a boxy look, which is a 4:3. It's currently, most people are going to, when they're installing new installs, with 16:9, the widescreen. That's what most televisions are in. Like when you hold your phone in a landscape, it's in a very similar kind of resolution. So it's important to consider that. Another piece that's on the market that you'll experience in our worship center is what we call triple wide, which allows us to project using 3 projectors to make very large, wide images. And the wonderful piece about that is, in most ways, it's called environmental projection, is how triple wide is often employed. It can also use screens. But to go with environmental projection, as you'll see in the worship center, we are able to project on one big long wall. We were using 4:3 screens when I came here, and we had the opportunity to renovate. I looked at the giant walls in the worship center and thought this is the perfect application for triple wide. I secretly have a dream one day to be able to ring the entire space in triple wide on each of the walls, but that's a ways off just yet. So in order to employ that, you need generally ProPresenter and a device called a triple wide head, which allows you to integrate the 3 different projectors that you'll use out of one computer. So there's, and for example, in the worship center, you will find 5 projectors. One is triple wide. Three are for the triple wide, which is what goes across the large wall. And then we have what we call the overlay computer, or projector rather, that is connected to it. You need 2 computers connected to the overlay computer, which is where we put most of our content, lyrics, videos, that sort of thing. And then there's one in the back which we call our confidence monitor, our confidence projector. And what that does is it displays the same content that's on the overlay projector so that the people on the platform can see what's ahead of them. Other times folks will use it on televisions. There's ways to integrate multiple slides on a television screen, as well as timers and messages from the booth. We haven't gone that route ourselves yet, but ProPresenter, for example, is capable of handling all of those applications. In our sanctuary, we have 3 projectors, and they all basically project the same thing. So we have to build our backgrounds as well as our content into one computer through ProPresenter, which then we also have a confidence monitor that just projects onto the wall as well, so then our people can know, choir members, worship leaders, liturgists can see what's on the screens. They don't have to kind of like do this awkward backwards looking thing to see what's happening. There's a lot of ways in which people are incorporating video, which is not something that we're doing just yet, but that, that you can incorporate that piece as well so that you can see what's happening from far away if you're in a big enough worship space to require that. We're not, so we're not doing that. But there's a wonderful app that I would point you to called the Shift Media app, and it's a $5 app for your phone, and it allows you to be able to take pictures of things on your phone and then edit those pictures, which you can then send them to yourself in your camera roll, or load them into the Shift app, the photo library, which allows you to integrate with ProPresenter. So what's wonderful is you can send people out to capture images in your community or images of tables, as I referenced earlier, and then integrate that into what you're doing in ProPresenter, which is a really, really neat feature. And you can edit them and manipulate them as part of on the phone and then send it out. So that's a really, really cool feature. Again, we find that less is more, especially when it comes to triple wide projection. We often are getting to the point now where we'll pick 2 or 3 anchor images, and then we'll manipulate them, their colors, in live time with our more experienced worship VJs, if you will. So that's a really, really exciting piece for us. I want to speak just real briefly about, the Shift Media app is really a marvelous thing, so I'd encourage you to check that out. It's available on the App Store through Apple. Then we have Visual Liturgy. I would point you to my favorite site, which is theworkofthepeople.com, and it is wonderful for us mainliners because it has phenomenal loops, where we keep an image going continuously under, say, like ritual actions such as communion or baptism. It's got wonderful content with folks like Parker Palmer and Walter Brueggemann, Miroslav Volf, all these just folks that really kind of tend to resonate with us mainline folks, Stanley Hauerwas. Just some really, really neat pieces on that, and some neat tellings of scripture readings. So I would really encourage you to check that out. I use their stuff all the time in worship. It's got its own particular aesthetic, but it's aesthetic that I resonate with. So I would encourage you to check that out. Let's talk a little bit about lighting. As I mentioned earlier, this phrase of the idea of being atmosphere architects, and one of the ways we can accomplish that is through the lighting that we choose to employ in a particular worship service. I believe that it's a very powerful way for us to continue to tell God's story in new and profound ways. So one of the things that most of us have, you'll find, is a lighting board. It's like a mixer, but it allows you to control the lights. So you'll see this image here. These are the lighting boards that we employ at Grace Avenue, and these are kind of old school these days as far as cutting edge technology goes. But you can see that top row of buttons on the left-hand side allows us to record different scenes. So we can, for example, when the band is exiting the stage, we have a scene where that goes dark and the light shifts to what's happening in worship in the center, whether it's a prayer or a scripture reading or the sermon. Or we can also set, we have our space in the worship center, for example, is divided into thirds. So 1/3 is the band, 1/3 is what's happening in the center, usually with liturgy, preaching, and then we have another side which has visual arts and sacramental place specifically for baptism. So you can see the table in the middle, but the baptismal font is on the right. So we're able to kind of program those to when we have a piece of action, ritually or otherwise, happening. We can highlight those with lights and make some really good transitions, because, friends, transitions is where the magic is at. There's a variety of lights that are available on the market. You can see here we're looking at par cans and LED cans. Par cans are theater lighting. They're wonderful, they're very bright, they're getting harder and harder to find and more expensive, and they produce a lot of heat. Then you'll see that's the picture on the left-hand side of the screen. On the right-hand side, we're called LEDs, and they last forever. They're much safer. Forever is a relative term. That's not literally true, but they last for a very long time. And when you have the opportunity to combine those two light sources, you can make some really wonderful looks. For example, with LEDs, you can set them to turn to different colors, whereas par cans, you have to you can do that digitally or through what we call DMX routing. Or with par cans, you've got to get on a lift or a ladder and put individually coated gels over them. So there's some advantages to LED cans. Some folks think the par cans look a little bit more natural. I think that's a matter of conditioning, but that's my thought on that. And then we can have the opportunity to do some accent and up lighting, which allows us to really set our atmosphere for worship in a beautiful way. So I encourage you to look at those options. There's some ways, even that you can do this in a very inexpensive way. I've made my own washes of light before by getting party light bulbs from, say, Home Depot and using my kindergarten color education and putting those lights in, those different colored party light bulbs into garage work light holders that you'll see like are $5 or $6 for those, and then I will mix two different colors together. If I'm looking to get a purple or a green or a yellow, just kind of general wash to go with the liturgical season, it's just very easy to do. So for $20 you can make your own lights in a very simple way. So we were going to talk a little bit about social media and the ways in which we can integrate that into worship. Really, the sky's the limit there. It's an exciting opportunity to help create liturgy, true liturgy, the work of the people. So, for example, if you are using ProPresenter, there's a Twitter integration feature where you can put tweets up on the screen if you're asking questions. I want to get people's feedback or response or prayers in that way. It's always good to have someone who's monitoring those before they go on the screen for obvious reasons. Well, maybe not so obvious, but I'll allow you to kind of ponder that one. Instagram can allow us the opportunity to integrate as well on the screen. You can send people out into the world, allow them to, whatever the particular theme or project you're working on, to be able to report back what they're doing. Still working on trying to figure out how we can use Periscope in an effective way. That's one of the newer fun ones that's out there. And so that's several of us are trying to figure out what exactly is this good for? How could we employ this in worship to help integrate the people and give them more of a voice in what we're doing in the liturgical moment? So lots of stuff to think about. I applaud you for all the work that you're doing in your churches at home. Thank you so much for the ministry that you are doing that God has clearly called you to. God bless you. I'll put some email and contact information on the screen. And if you've got any questions or thoughts, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much. I look forward to your presence at Grace Avenue and just wish I could be with you. God bless you and all that you do. Thank you so much.